Pausing. Okay. The final point is, of course, Kefka, the Mad Clown himself. Arguably one of the best villains of all time. Certainly one of the best video game villains of all time. He's in a league of his own. Now, as I discussed in my Suikoden 2 review rather recently, a few hours ago actually, Luca Blight is what I consider the epitome, the categorization of a complete monster. And I mentioned Kefka in that review, and it is worth noting that I do not think Kefka qualifies as a complete monster, and there's several reasons why. First and foremost, a complete monster does not engender sympathy. Now, I want to qualify this for a moment. Just because a villain has some horrible thing that happened to them or something that's not their fault, that has made them the way they are, that doesn't excuse the evil things they did. That's not the point. The point is, when you look at someone who has been so utterly abused and trashed and ruined, like Kuja, for example, it's hard not to feel sympathy for that person. Now, especially since in Kuja's case, he finally did end up redeeming himself, but moving along. So when you look at Kefka, all you can think of is how screwed up Gestalt is for everything he did to him, and for the fact that he kept him on. Now, originally, Kefka was kept on... Okay, I guess I should take a step back here. Kefka had an accident that happened to him. He was the very first attempt at a Magitek Confusion. It went horribly wrong, and Kefka was screwed up mentally, emotionally. His very soul was infused with magic. He was essentially a half-Esper, and it really messed him up. And the reason he is so screwed up is because of that. Now, again, that by itself isn't quite enough, although that certainly does provide some sympathy. But the way he's characterized, the utter emptiness of his existence, the fact that he was kept on in the Empire without even really a rank, to honor his previous service as pity. He was being pitied, and that's why he kept on. Now, later on, Gestalt just stopped caring because Gestalt is an evil shit. Is unrelated to that, but I'm going to go ahead and segue that into my next point, which is the fact that a complete monster in whatever work they're in should be the most evil, most reviled, most horrible individual of that game, or book, or movie, or whatever. And Kefka is not. That would be Ultros. No, sorry. Can you imagine? Ultros! Oh, I hate that little purple octopus. No. The most evil, hated, blah, 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 blah character is Gestalt, without question. He was really an evil bastard. He had no consideration for anyone's lives except his own. He was only out for himself. He was willing to trash the world, to upset the balance of existence, to some degree, not to the degree Kefka was, just because he wanted to be on top of the trash heap. He was a horrible human being, and he had no excuse, and he had no sympathy, and he is a horrible freaking individual. So, Kefka not being the worst character in the setting just is the second point as to why he does not deserve, or does not reach the point of being a complete monster. And the third reason is actually technically my first reason, the first thing that occurred to me when I was thinking about this. See, a complete monster, you like the character, you have an interest in the character, you want to see them, but you don't find them entertaining, I guess is the word I want to use. Kefka had style. Kefka made you laugh. Kefka was just enough levels of ridiculous on top of being amusing. Yeah, and it's not quite as obvious in FF6, but if you ever play either of the Dissidias, most especially Dissidia 2, every scene with Kefka is gold. He's hilarious. He's awesome. He's just sitting there, and he's doing it in character, too, because one of the motivations for him is the fact that nothing matters. And so he's just having fun with it. He's just doing whatever, because whatever amuses me right now is what I'm going to go do right now, because what's the point? Because that's Kefka. And if that happens to involve annihilating a town of people because they're there, yeah, okay. And if that involves bouncing around and laughing like a clown, then okay. There's no difference to him. But the point is, no matter what you can say about him, Kefka was amusing. He was entertaining. He was funny. And that disqualifies him for being a complete monster. But there's more to say about Kefka, aside from the fact that he is not a complete monster, and the fact that he was completely alone. You see, Kefka... Again, I could fill a whole video with Kefka. In fact, I guess technically I am filling a whole video with Kefka right now. Damn it, Pax. But, I don't even know where to start. See, Kefka ramped up really beautifully. This is something most games don't actually do. They don't usually have the villain ramp up. They have the heroes ramp up to reach the level of the villains, but the villain started right down there with you. In fact, the villain started below you. The Kefka at the beginning of the game was a wimp. He was a weakling. He had great potential, again, half Asper, but he was pathetic. He didn't even know anything except for like Fire 1. Woo, you know. But as the game progresses, he gets stronger with you. You know, by the first time you really fight him at the Battle of Narsh, he's actually a challenging boss. If you've played normally up to that point, he has access to Ice 2 and stuff like that. Holy crud. You know, these are things that you don't even have access to yet. And when you see, every time you see him after that, he just kind of keeps ramping up. There's a scene several game hours after that in the Magitech Research Facility where he's literally kicking Espers around. Now granted, these are drained, half-dead Espers, but as you can find out when you fight them, they aren't powerless. They can still do plenty of damage. In fact, that can be a really annoying fight if you're not ready for it. And he's just kicking them around like they're garbage. And then the next major time we see him, he shows up and there's an entire troop of fully healthy, fully aware, fully ready Espers ready to go. And he destroys them. They literally don't even touch him. In game mechanic terms, they don't touch him. They show a combat sequence, you know, just like the usual FF6 battle thing. And it's him versus the Espers, and he just wipes the floor with them. Doesn't even get touched. And then he actually starts laughing. He says, okay, this is pathetic. I didn't realize you were this weak. And then he kills about 14 of them. I believe I counted at one point in time. In one hit. And then just takes all their Magicite. Alright, that's 14 more things of Magicite. Ah, it should be good for now. Yep. I just wiped out an entire army of Vespers. No biggie. By myself? You get the point I'm getting across here? Kefka ramped up throughout the course of the game, just like you did, and he did so beautifully within the narrative in a way that made sense within the story. And it's worth noting that the whole reason Kefka ramped up, rather than anyone else, yes, Gestalt became stronger, obviously because he was still using Magicite and still trying to become the god he wanted to be, but Kefka became so much more because he, like the Joker in the most recent Batman, was so willing to do whatever. It didn't bother him to commit unspeakable acts in order to accomplish his goals. He was just, whatever, yeah, okay. And so him advancing in power so rapidly and so psychotically makes perfect sense in the setting. And he... I'm sorry, I have to... this is technically a spoiler alert, so if you feel like not hearing this, cover your ears. But Kefka becomes... I'll give you a moment to cover your ears. Kefka becomes the... I hate to use this word. The focus, I guess? I hate to use the word God, because it's not really applicable, but he becomes the center point of magic for the world. As in, the 3 statues that he absorbed, he replaces them by himself, to give you an idea of the ramping up this goes through here. Unlike, say, Sephiroth, who was a badass literally from the first moment you hear about him, or Golbez, same thing, or something that isn't that, Magus in Chrono Trigger, or Lavos in Chrono Trigger. You know, the whole game is about you getting up to their level. Unlike Kefka, who goes up to the level with you and then keeps going for a while. Now, granted, yes, the final fight with Kefka was pathetic. It's one of the easiest ones in the game, in the history of last bosses. In fact, that started the trend of Final Fantasy games having easy last bosses. I am regretful to say that was not a good place to start, but moving along.